Galileo 2333 Creepypasta. List of rules for my night shift part 2. I arrived for another night shift at my job of testing electronic components. Another pre-shift check of everything indicated in the rules. I was scheduled to begin testing a new component, one that is very temperature sensitive and featuring its own heat source inside the case to keep it at the optimal temperature. It was a Monday evening, Tuesday morning night. No odor of cooking from the break room at the time of my first break time. I went to the bathroom and the little girl in the orange hijab appeared in the mirror. The first time I've ever experienced this. I kept her in sight in the mirror and pushed the soap dispenser 3 times, as the rules list indicated I should do if this condition occurs. The first 2 times soap squirted, then the dispenser was empty the third squirt. As indicated, the procedure works regardless of whether there's soap in the dispenser. The little girl disappeared instantaneously into thin air behind me. Not slowly fading away or turning to vapor, just an instant disappearance. I had another uneventful middle of the night lunch. A Nissin beef cup o' noodles that I use a spoon to crush inside the cup before I add hot water from the water cooler that also features a hot tap. Right after I returned to my workstation at midnight, having powered off any devices that play audio that I'm not sure isn't capable of playing Tiptoe Through the Tulips, I set up my test fixture. I was loading a batch of these independently temperature-controlled circuits onto the test card when I felt little hands grabbing my knees and a warm feeling of something velvety crawling into my lap. The little girl in the orange hijab and blue dress was cuddling herself into my lap. The rules didn't specify how quickly I should perform Appendix A procedures, just that I should do that rather quickly. I knew I should follow Appendix A sooner rather than later. She looked attentively at my work. She felt completely human-like. Once again, no large or dark or bright red eyes, and her hands weren't extending out like tree branches like the rules list indicated is possible. She was warm and had that unmistakable little girl smell, mixed with an incense-like fragrance. She looked straight at me and said, "You're really sweet." I was thinking of replying with something, but then I remembered the rule that I'm never to speak directly to her unless I catch her playing with the XRF spectrometer. What caught my attention and prompted me towards Appendix A of the rules was a grinding noise emanating from the break room. It sounded like a refrigerator that has a failing compressor. I got up from my chair, and the little girl hopped down from me. I was suspecting I've bent or even this time fully broken another rule by delaying my response to the condition described in Appendix A of the rules for my night shift. I sauntered into the break room. The grinding noise was coming from the refrigerator by the window, the one that is supposed to contain the bottle of Sprite for use in the event the little hijab girl crawls into my lap while I'm working. The tamper evidence seal on the door looked faded to where I couldn't see any expiration date. That's odd. I checked it before my shift as always, and it was dated the day before tonight. I pulled the door and the wire holding the seal felt more difficult to break than previous times I deployed the Sprite. I yanked the door and I could hear the little girl giggling just outside the break room, getting closer. I wrestled the door very forcefully open and it fell off the fridge, with a feeling that the hinges were rusted through. Inside the fridge it was warm and the bottle of Sprite was only partially full. The bottle was dented and the liquid looked flat and slightly discolored. The light inside the fridge was also burned out. I knew by now things were going very wrong. I opened the bottle and began pouring the liquid on the floor. Little hijab girl was standing in the doorway of the break room, her hands covering her smile. When I attempted to sing the prescribed verse I got HOOOOOOES, suddenly a very irritating vapor filled the air, like ozone from electric arcing. This made it very difficult for me to form the words, and momentarily stung my eyes to where I couldn't see. Once the liquid was on the floor, I dropped the empty Sprite bottle, the plastic now feeling deteriorated like a soda bottle that's been left as beach litter for years. The refrigerator let out a final groan and stopped. Once my vision cleared, I looked into the darkness of the lab, and saw a dark shadow of an adult woman in Muslim dress firmly leading little hijab girl by the hand towards the front lobby of the building. I had a feeling she's the girl's mom. Not sure what to do next, I returned to the test bench I'd been working at. A message silently appeared on the computer screen with a bright red frame. It read the following: "You are in an extremely dangerous situation. You might be able to save yourself if you follow the exact instructions listed here." Momentarily you will notice an odor from the break room. It will not be a pleasant odor. Her mother is cooking. The fumes are not only foul-smelling but they will incapacitate you, and very bad things will happen to you if that occurs. Remain in your seat at this test bench and on the self-contained breathing apparatus that's normally used in the event of CO2 system rupture. It's in the cabinet beneath the desk. Remain seated, breathing from the SCBA, and read this whole list of instructions thoroughly. The portable SCBA units are located throughout the facility for evacuation if the CO2 system has a major leak, or if there's a release of other chemicals used in our processes. Product testing requires cold temperatures, and there is a large tank of CO2 piped into the lab into each test chamber. Employees are required to regularly practice using the SCBAs. I've gotten pretty good at getting the SCBA on quickly, but this is the first time I've used one in a real emergency. The smell will persist for exactly 9 minutes then vanish. As you're probably aware from training, the SCBA tanks here hold about 10 minutes of air. It is very important that you remain seated at this workstation during that time. Do not attempt any of your normal tasks. It's best if you spend the time reading this list of instructions and make sure you understand fully. After 9 minutes elapse since you first notice the smell, immediately leave this workstation and proceed to the remaining steps listed. At that time, take off your SCBA. The air will be safe and carrying it will only hinder your movement. As I read that paragraph, I noticed a sudden and very foul stench. It smelled like a combination of chemicals and decomposing organic matter. The first thing that came to my mind was an old Calvin and Hobbes sketch where Calvin's mom was preparing dinner on the stove, and she poured gasoline and weed killer into the pot and rotten vegetables and other nasty stuff and mixed it, and Calvin loudly refused dinner, insisting he saw what went in there. I put on the SCBA, following the instincts I got from training, and clean air flowed into the mask. I continued reading the instructions. Once you've left this desk, you will have exactly 113 seconds to get into the XRF spectrometer lab. When maneuvering to there, do not look towards the conference room. You might hear noises from that direction, but no matter how compelling that is, you must completely ignore that. When you reach the XRF room, close and lock the door and use the heavy file cabinet to barricade the door. In the desk drawer you will find a copy of the Quran. Open it to Surah 24.31 and place it inside the chamber of the XRF scanner. We realize you don't normally use the XRF machine, but we know it's been demonstrated to you in the past, so you know how to power it up. Turn it on and pay attention to the computer monitor that's attached to the unit. An image of the basement should appear with the red, blue and green doors. Click through the doors in the opposite order of what you normally would when escaping the downstairs. After the last door, a scene should appear of Tiny Tim on a stage, accompanied by the little girl in the orange and blue hijab, holding his hand. There should be a banner above the stage that says Women's Club of Minneapolis. Tiny Tim will pick up the little girl and begin removing her hijab and dress. At this moment you must unplug the monitor before you see any part of her that you haven't seen yet, and especially before he begins singing. He will sing Tiptoe Through the Tulips while physically interacting with her, similar to how he would play a ukulele. You must not under any circumstances witness any of that. After you've unplugged the monitor, look inside the XRF spectrometer chamber. The Quran should be gone, and in its place there should be 5 fresh tulips. 2 of them should be orange, the other 3 should be purplish blue. The orange tulips should be above and in between the 3 purplish blue ones. Smell each of the tulips to verify they have no scent whatsoever. If any of them have a scent, we're very sorry to tell you that breaking the rule of your night shift was the last mistake you ever made. The air continued flowing in my SCBA and noises issued from the break room area, like dishes and utensils being thrown around. I looked at the time. 7 minutes since I first noticed little hijab girl's mom's foul cooking odors. The indicator on the SCBA gave an estimated time of 4 more minutes of air at my average rate of consumption. Plenty of air. The instructions continued. Once you've verified the tulips have no scent, remove the file cabinet that you used to barricade the door. Once you've opened the door, exit and go directly to the conference room. The conference room bathroom door should be slightly ajar and the light should be off. Approach the bathroom door, avoiding looking in. While facing away from the bathroom, reach in just far enough to turn on the bathroom light. The switch is right next to the door, and immediately close the door and leave the conference room without looking back. It's especially important that you don't see towards the toilet area or into the mirror of that bathroom. Gather your helmet and jacket and hop on your scooter. Turn off the nightlight in the shop as you exit the building, not looking back. The headless e-bike rider will be waiting in the parking lot. Follow him. He will guide you safely home. The roads might look different and he might ride in a direction you don't think leads to your house, but it's very important you follow him. I memorized all 12 steps.